This is Mandatory Listening. I'm your host, Kent Mann. Each week, we sit down over a cup of coffee and discuss interesting topics in the world of the customer experience. Morning from Mandatory Listening. This is Kent Mann, joined today by Dan Mann.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Can't complain. Enjoying some coffee in our studio. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Season 2 of Mandatory Listening.
Yeah, it's. I think we've made some changes. We've looked at some new ideas, and we're ready to get back to it.
Looking forward to another great season for Mandatory Listening 2019.
Yeah.
What you been doing since we last spoke?
Staying warm, enjoying the wind and the cold in Asheville, which doesn't really get that cold. People in the north are like, this guy. Yeah, this guy in the south.
It is 19 today, so
it is 19.
That's legit.
Yeah. So, what about you? What have you been watching, listening to?
I have been trying to get into the new season of True Detective.
Yeah, I'm in that too.
Yeah, so I think you're ahead of me.
It's episode 4.
Yeah, don't say anything.
I won't.
Matthew's not in it, so we know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got 2 seasons, 2 episodes down, and 2 more to go to get caught up.
Yep.
And of course, we're all waiting for, drum roll please, the Game of Thrones.
Don't. This is not a Game of Thrones podcast.
Okay, we won't come back to that.
Yeah. How about Bohemian Rhapsody? I heard you saw that.
Loved it, and I'm glad to see it's getting all the attention because I absolutely love Queen and love the story. I thought, even though it wasn't completely perfect, it was really a very inspiring film. And
yeah.
I loved Rami, was that his name, the actor?
I'm not sure what his name is.
He's good.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, so let's get to it.
So your January playlist is full of Queen, I bet.
Yeah, you know me all too well.
Yeah.
Probably 4 of the 20 songs are Queen songs.
Yeah.
And they're like the B-sides, stuff you don't often hear,
yeah.
which I'm into.
I've listened to some new songs I never heard from them. So today we're talking about you.
Oh, our audience?
Yes, you. No, we're talking about your book, ORBiT.
Absolutely. One of my favorite topics. Love talking about it.
What is ORBiT?
The book or the
book?
ORBiT?
Yeah, what's the book?
So interestingly enough, it was released 2 years ago this month, and it's been out in 2 years.
Yeah.
I have been working with this particular approach for training and this approach for leadership development really for 20 years. And developed it back when I was working with Backrack, and then have used it extensively throughout the years of the Man Group. But I'd never really documented it. So it's a custom approach. It's got some familiar elements from other trainings that we've used, but we've used it very successfully. And so I thought, hey, let's write about it and let's share it with the world so other people can use it.
Yeah.
So that's what the book is.
So where did you get ORBiT? Is it about space and the final frontier? It's a science fiction novel.
I do like some Star Wars and Star Trek.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's about. No, ORBiT is, as well you might imagine, it's an acronym for Optimized Reality Behavior Training. And we stuck the I in there to
lowercase
to denote influence, and because there was no I in that acronym, so to spell the word. So we call it ORBiT for short, but it's Optimized Reality Behavior Training, and it's a methodology and an approach for developing people.
Okay, and I think we have described it as not a product, it's not a item, it's not a one step and done. It's a way of working, and You said you've been doing this for 20 years.
When we consult with a client, and let's say particularly with anyone who is a client with a managerial responsibility, they are responsible for developing people, they're responsible for leading a team of any kind, whether that's in a restaurant setting or whether that's in a typical corporate setting or whether that's in retail or in sales of any kind. If you're the person in charge of driving and leading a team, the ORBiT approach is a way of life for directing your team. It is a way of life for improving people's individual performance. And the net result of that is better results for your organization, whatever those results are, most notably sales.
Yeah, we always talk about this, and we talked about it a lot in season 1, but it's a accountability factor around we're going to work this way today, and we're going to work this way tomorrow, and then next Wednesday we're going to work this way too. And so it's every day. It becomes second nature. It becomes this is the way the company is. And then you could call that months down the line, years down the line, a company culture of accountability. And so it doesn't really matter what kind of approach it is, but if you don't have a company approach, then you'll never have a company culture. especially from a manager.
Well, as we're making this podcast, this is Super Bowl week, and so anybody watch football out there, we're headed into another final game for the NFL season, and it's easy to bring sports analogies then because of that. So let's just look at the Patriots. If you
That's a dangerous topic. How dare you?
It is, but if you follow U.S. football in the National Football League, then you have to know about the New England Patriots, who are perennial world champions and are in it again this year. You could say that Bill Belichick, their coach, has developed this kind of culture. And it's a culture of accountability. It's a culture where there's a disciplined approach to doing the work. But more than that, there's a culture around improving. If you join that team, every single practice and every single month, your team is working to improve its performance, catch more passes, run a little bit faster, tackle a little bit more frequently. And the end result of that is that they are constantly working to improve. And that's what I see missing in the world of sales, in the world of retail, in the world of business. There's not often enough a culture of constant improvement. And that has to be the path. And I can tell you, if you're in a technology space, technology is constantly improving. Little tweaks, little improvements, little updates. If we, as on the people side of this, whether it be sales or service or anything associated with delivering a product, if that group of people are not also improving in their way, then certainly technology is going to outpace and outcompete your results.
So what is the advantage of the people-based selling, the people-based Streamline? So when we talk about football, we get a little better at catching a pass. We get a little better at reading the situation or reading the quarterback or whatever it is. What is it about being ahead of the curve? What does it look like when you're ahead of the curve when you're on the sales floor or when you're managing your team?
Number one, people and process go together. So when you're a technology and you're an algorithm and you've got a math calculation behind what the software is doing, that is regimented, and the only failure there is some kind of electronic breakdown or whatever. Here, we're talking about a people and a process combined. And so good people and good process deliver then a repeatable experience. And that would be like why we still like waiters and waitresses in restaurants instead of some sort of automated delivery system.
It's why they're tip-based salary, they're tip-based income, because they're paid based on their performance.
And so let's talk about what this really is that I need to trust the information I'm receiving. And so if it's being delivered from a software system that has recognized my voice in its phone and now starts peppering me with ads because it heard me talking a la Facebook, I just don't trust that. But if I'm dealing with a person and that person has listened to me and that person can repeat back to me, and that person, by reading their body language and by looking and creating some rapport with them, and because that person is trained and understands the product I'm after, well, I'm likely to trust their advice and what they're offering me, and they can respond. They can respond instantly to my request. So I like that. If I'm buying a piece of furniture, I'm spending a couple $1,000s for a couch, which I recently did. I want to be able to sit on that couch and experience that couch. I want to ask questions about its durability. I want to talk about how heavy it is. I want to sit on those cushions and feel them. I want to imagine it or picture it in my space and see whether it matches the rest of the design of my living room. So that comes with people. If I'm buying a bicycle, I need advice. What kind of bike do you ride? What's the experience you have on this bike? If I'm buying some technology or electronics, I want the advice of the person who can give me some specific and particular advice to me based on my experience. So that's why that matters.
So how do we get that?
Well,
I think would take us back to ORBiT.
It takes us back to ORBiT. And that's where, first of all, a leader on the floor, a leader in that team knows the results that leader wants or that organization wants. That starts with a good process and a set of metrics that define success, whether that's the amount of sales or the amount of customer interaction or the amount of activity that takes place. So that's someone driving that train with expectations who follows a disciplined learning methodology.
So even if you're terrible, you have 100 customer interactions a day and every one of them is terrible, you still have a metric associated with it because there's a minimum amount required of effort to get better.
Well, that's right. And that's why you wanted to track these results. And what I often see in retail is that retailers are reluctant. Well, this is true in a lot of business, but definitely we see it in retail because so many of our clients are in retail. Our customers are reluctant to track individual results. An individual sales associate, an individual customer service agent, an individual manager, we're reluctant to track those individual results that they contribute for whatever reason, and therefore that person does not know in what areas they need to improve.
Yeah.
They're not tracked, and therefore they don't know how good they're doing or how badly. So that's what ORBiT is for. ORBiT is a methodology for that team leader to create that improvement. To a disciplined approach. Really, as you said, it's a culture of improvement, and the methodology within ORBiT is devised to build those skills, develop those skills and attributes and behaviors so that the results improve.
So if we're talking about a world-class football team, a world-class soccer team, a world-class airline pilot, a world-class doctor, a world-class nurse, these people spend 7 years minimum training for their work. And then after that, it's like another 20 years before they're considered quote unquote world class. What are they doing all the time that we can translate into a sales floor associate that doesn't require 27 years of practice? And how do we streamline that process to where no matter who, if we get 50 new employees in a year, which, with the turnover of some of the people that we work with, you'd think that they have 50 new people a year. How do you make sure every single one is trained to your standard?
You said the red flag word there for me, which is streamline. How do you streamline this training?
Yeah.
Here's the disconnect. In every one of those situations you described, which would be a doctor, a nurse, a commercial airline pilot, where they go through a sophisticated learning process, but they continue to learn and continue to be held accountable for improving, every single one of them, because so much is at stake. In the retail space we're in, and in the world of management and leadership and sales, we give somebody a video, and they sit and watch that video on a laptop, and now we put them out there in the world and say, you're, quote, trained.
And the video, by the way, is on the stitching of the new shoe that came out.
Yeah, exactly. So now we've put them in front of a video and call them trained, and that's in the world of today's commerce, that feels like streamlined training.
Yeah.
And that is not streamlined training. That's nothing. That's just streamlined with no results. The net effect of that is, and this is the real problem, is that we then have a poor customer service experience, we have a poor sales experience, we have untrained, unprepared sales associates or service providers.
And then on their resume or their training module or their yearly check-in meeting, they have, next to their name, they've been trained. And so then as a manager or an owner, it's easy to go, man, we trained our people. Man, the consumers are changing, or the internet's killing us, or the industry is just not what it used to be, or we're dying. We're struggling. Something else is killing us. When in reality, they have not even begun training.
No, they haven't. And this is here. You've hit the nail on the head here, because let's just change this around and say that your pilot on your Delta flight today came on and said, "Folks, I'm glad to be working with you today. I'm completed my training. I watched 8 videos, and I took the test after all those videos.
I took a 5-question quiz.
5-question quiz, and I scored 100 on all of them. So I'm pretty ready to go. I'm looking forward to this. My first time in the cockpit here, but hey, I've really done a good job. I watched those videos, and I think I've really got it. These are great videos, and the training program that Delta's come up with is streamlined now. It's a streamlined training process, and I got my certificate. Yeah, we're all having a mass exit out of that plane. We're not going to fly that plane.
Yep.
That's not training. That's not development. That's not improving a skill. But for some reason, because it's not airplane travel, commercial airplane travel we're talking about, it's, quote, just sales.
Yep.
We put a minimum wage employee in front of a 30-minute video and believe we're good to go to provide an A+ service. That is not going to happen. And hence, ORBiT. ORBiT is a method that takes the same learning tactics and the same learning approach that all of these advanced activities require, and apply them now to management, apply them to customer service, apply them to call center training, apply them to sales training, so that people can systematically develop and improve their selling or customer service or emotional intelligence skills. They can be learned, they can be developed. So that's what we do. And the method is really, from the outside looking in, you would say, well, that's just role playing. And, it's not. It is a simulation. experience.
What's the difference?
Well, if we were to be using role play to teach a pilot how to fly a plane, well, here's a plane, go fly it, go try it, or pretend to fly a plane, just fly around. That's not the way commercial pilots learn their tactics. They pull out certain moments in the course of a flight and they practice them. Taking off in a rainstorm, taking off in a snowstorm, taking off where you lose your hydraulics, taking off where your left engine is knocked out, taking off in distress. So they take that 10 minutes and practice that, or landing in certain circumstances, or certain elements of the flight, and they repeat them. They practice them. They circle back, do it again. Same thing with football. Quarterbacks learn certain situations, a 3-step drop back and a pass out to the flats. Do it again. 3-step drop back, pass out to the flats. They do it again while there's a coach watching. The commercial airline pilot does it while there is a trainer watching. So it's done under observance. So it's often said, well, practice makes perfect. Well, I've watched a lot of people practice and never get better. That was me on a golf course, by the way, just standing there hitting a golf ball, and I can't figure out why I'm continuing to slice.
I was going to say, I'm thinking from the eyes of a sales floor associate. I deal with hundreds of customers every week, and that's training. According to your standard, that's a little simulation, in and of itself, even if it is real. But what's the difference with the coach?
Yeah, it's perfect practice makes perfect.
Okay.
Not practice makes perfect. And credit to Franco Zizzo on that one. That's his quote. Perfect practice makes perfect because the coach needs to observe what's being done and correct. You're hitting that slice in the practice range of golf because you're overcorrecting in your grip, or you're not approaching the ball correctly. And so you continue to slice. So until you correct that grip or your stance, you're going to continue to slice. So the coach corrects the bad behavior, reinforces the correction. And so the ORBiT methodology is creating simulations. It is addressing, here's a situation you might be in, whether it's takeoff or landing, or maybe it's how to approach a customer. Maybe it's how to resolve a test drive in a car, or how to better handle this sort of service writing tactic. Whatever the element is you're training, it takes just that moment and addresses it, and then replays it again and again as a simulation. Here are the 5 minutes of this 1 hour exercise. We're going to work on the 5 minutes, and we're going to practice it, and we're going to look at it again, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to give you some coaching, and we're going to try it and try it and try it again. And that's the way for learning. Think about, you back to nurses, and you mentioned nurses learning. How many times do you think nurses have given a shot or been able to strap on the device that brings the vein to the surface so that they can get access to it? That has to be practiced. It has to be practiced and practiced again with coaching, because so much is at risk.
Yeah, there is a lot of risk. And I think there's people out there who would listen to this and say, well, you joked that it was just sales or whatever, but then they're going to say again, well, yeah, it is just sales. It is just a retail job or whatever it might be. But then the owner or the manager or whatever, their livelihood is at stake. So it's not just sales. These are the people that are directly contributing to the success of your business. Because if your business is all consumer driven, those are the needles, those are the veins. That's the crash landing when you're in the simulator of a airline simulation. It's like these are the most important moments of the training. It's not just having a stocked inventory or having a good looking store. If you have these people who are your ambassadors and they're messing you up every step of the way, they are literally cutting into your top line sales. And they don't even realize it because they think to themselves, oh, that wasn't a real customer. Oh, they were just browsing. Oh, they're not just shopping.
Well, if you don't elevate the approach to training and the approach to developing and receiving results that you want to the same level of other exercises where training and learning and development are crucial, then you're going to continue to get mediocre results. You can blame the internet, you can blame your competitors, you can blame the millennials. The bottom line is it's your fault. You are not developing your people with intention. You are hoping that people learn. You are hoping that folks get better. You are hoping that video they watched measurably changed their behavior and their skill set, and it's not happening.
It's like using Windows 97 or whatever, and you're wondering why your computer's running so slow.
That's exactly right.
It's like you have not made those steps as technology gets faster and faster, people need to get faster and faster with it. And if you're choosing to live in that slow processor zone, then you're literally digging your own grave.
Absolutely. So, I can apply this to so many things in life. And we started with sports examples, and we've talked about commercial airline pilots and nurses, and the list goes on and on.
Even military, like any high stake, even low stake jobs, a practice is involved.
That's right. But I'll bring it right home to you. And it's just as I referenced earlier, we went and bought some couches and some furniture this past week. And so in shopping at 6 different stores, you can just see the difference in the training and in the commitment of the sales associates. In some cases, no one even acknowledges that you're standing in their busy store. No one even looks at you. You're looking at a $4,000, $5,000 piece of furniture, and no one is brave enough or courageous enough to walk over and speak to you. You go to another store, and they're following you around, quoting all kinds of inappropriate data or data I don't need or care about, like the construction content or where this is made or information that I'm not interested in. I care about what color it is and what the price is at this point. And it wasn't until we actually found the right sales associate who was able to connect with us, build rapport with us, and then listen to us that we were able to feel comfortable enough to spend the money to buy this product. She had a practiced skill. She had developed an approach. She was, in looking back on her approach, her name was Pam, by the way. So Pam, if you're listening to this, thank you so much for a great job. Pam was very disciplined in her approach. She did not appear too aggressive. She did not give us a lot of information we didn't care about. She was responsive, and she was connecting, and she was rapport building. Ultimately, then building trust, and we had a very positive experience. It's been all the way through to receiving the furniture in our living room. The point is, she's someone who has developed a skill. She's made this her life's work, and someone working with her has helped her to develop that skill, giving her feedback, tracking her results, measuring her performance, practicing this with her. And until every one of our listeners here who drive a business can take that same level of focus to developing your team, then you're going to continue getting partial and mediocre and frustrating results. You have to commit to learning that is at the highest level of learning. That's what's called for in today's business climate.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's a certain level, we talked about the minimum effort required, and the effort comes from the sales floor associate, the salesperson, the person who's on the front lines, the person who needs training. The person who's being trained, there's a minimum amount of effort required to get better, whether it's they're coming in a little bit early to be trained or to work on something that was designated. And then the certain minimum level of expertise comes from the coach. So when you talk about Bill Belichick, he has so much experience with football, watching football, knowing about the game of football. And so the coach just has to know, and we talk about a manager, that manager who's coaching just has to know what standards are minimum required on our sales floor. And then it becomes, okay, we can train to that. And so what's worst case scenario? Let me pull you aside and we'll show you what a worst case scenario is. And then you do that over a career of managing people. And guess what? You're now a Bill Belichick of a manager. You know how to develop people. And that's a pretty damn good skill.
That's exactly right, and
those are the skills that pay the salaries that people can live off of, that people can really succeed off of.
It's marketable.
It's how to manage people and how to develop a team.
That's right. Interestingly enough, I have a good friend, Mike Arinza, who lives out in where do you live, Mike? Kansas, I think. Yeah, it is Kansas. He studied youth leadership. He was working with high school students for many years. And I ran into him. I hadn't seen him in probably 20 years. I ran into him in the Atlanta airport recently. He's now the head of surgery at the University of Kansas Medical Center. 0 medical degrees, does not know how to do surgery, wouldn't touch a scalpel or know anything about it, but he manages surgeons. And it's a perfect example of the skill set of influence and leadership and development transfers. It transfers to anything in life, and that's why the book is called ORBiT, The Art and Science of Influence. And it is, ORBiT is a training method, but really ORBiT, the result of ORBiT is the ability to influence people, the ability to get people to want to and then therefore do, train, improve, become better, and get better results. So it is a book about influence. It is a book about changing adult behavior. It is a book about growing results, improving results by being an effectively influential manager and leader. That's the goal.
We recently talked about this in one of our meetings where it was just, this is a way of working. Methodology kind of fits that. There's not a great word for it, but it is just a way, a way of being, a way of, culture. And people were like, oh, how do you get a great company culture? Well, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you work the same way. And then eventually it becomes cultural.
The other part of culture there is that the same thing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if that same thing is improving, and if that same thing is winning, and if that same thing is getting better results, then I'm very motivated. Now, if doing the same thing is just dead and flat and not getting results and not effective,
defensive, and
then that's going to have the opposite effect. Of course, the method here is improving and getting better.
Yeah, I mean, you can walk into, I'm not going to throw any names under the bus, but you can walk into certain stores, some big box retailers and some, small brands. You can tell that the company culture for the last decade has been, we are a losing team and we don't want to get any better and we want to hide in the back or whatever it is. And that's just the way it's been. And so that's kind of permeated throughout that, retail in and of itself is suffering, but really it's just that mindset, that culture has not come out.
Well, that's why we wrote the book. That's why we, as a company, develop and use this ORBiT methodology in everything we do. It's true in our Man University program. It's true in our Gear program. It's true in our Master Trainer course. It's the way we approach our work because we know it works, we've seen it work, and we are committed to work in this way.
Yep, I agree.
Well, we're at the end of the podcast. Is this the end of the podcast club?
Yeah, I think so. So if you made it this far, thanks for listening. I know it was a real grinder there. We talked about some real in-depth stuff.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I want to make sure everyone knows how to get ORBiT, the Art and Science of Influence. It is available on our website. We've got a page dedicated to ORBiT, and if you go there, you can click and order the book. It's also available at Barnes & Noble and, of course, on Amazon.com. So if you go to Amazon, you can order it there. But since you are at the end of the podcast club, I am going to give you a copy of this incredibly valuable $22 book simply by writing us and saying, I'd love to have a copy of the book as promised by Dan and Ken at the end of this podcast. So thanks for hanging around. Listen to the end, and please let me send you a copy of the book so you can read it for yourself.
Yep, and we're excited about Manndatory Listening Season 2, and we're going to keep moving forward with this. We're really enjoying it, and we love to get your feedback and love to hear your thoughts. So appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time. That's it for this episode. If you like what you hear, subscribe and leave a review on our iTunes channel. We'll see you next week.